Before birth. Before his birth, Luke Skywalker was the subject of several prophecies. Thousands of years before his birth, Skywalker appeared in a vision shared by Jedi Masters Feln, Kit Analia, and Zamar, along with his father Anakin Skywalker as Darth Vader, Ben Skywalker, and his descendant Cade Skywalker, as well as Zane Carrick. All four of these individuals would later be affected by the Moor talisman. The vision also showed Karnas Moor, hundreds of rat ghouls, and a burning city. In approximately 990 BBY, Bodo Bass's master foretold Luke and his sister Leia's struggle against the reborn Palpatine. In 10 ABY, circa 230 BBY, the Jedi training vessel, the Ch'Unthor, crash-landed on the planet Dathomir. The Jedi Master Yoda, along with other Jedi, fought with the witches of Dathomir. Coming to a stalemate, he agreed to leave the ship's data tapes, although he left no means of reading them. The tapes were bestowed to Rel of the Singing Mountain clan for safekeeping until such a time Yoda foresaw when a Jedi would come to save the planet from darkness, and the information could safely be shared with the witches. Luke Skywalker, Yoda's final student, found his way to Dathomir and fulfilled his master's prophecy. In 19 BBY, the Jedi Knight Shah Kun dueled and was defeated by Darth Vader. As she died, Kun experienced a vision through the force of a rebellion against the Galactic Empire, the Jedi's return in Luke Skywalker, Vader redeeming himself for his son by killing Emperor Palpatine, and the rebirth of the Jedi Order through Luke Skywalker. Realizing that the future did not depend on her, Kun died at peace. Early life. Luke Skywalker was born on the asteroid colony of Polis Massa in 19 BBY, shortly after the end of the Clone Wars and the start of the Great Jedi Purge. He and his twin sister Leia, who was born shortly after him, were the children of the Galactic Republic Senator Padme Amidala and the Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, a former hero of the Jedi Order, who had recently fallen to the dark side of the Force and become a Sith Lord. The twins' mother had been choked by their father on Mustafar after Skywalker believed Amidala had betrayed him, causing the weakened Amidala to lose her will to live and die not long after giving birth to Luke and Leia. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda knew that the children, both having a natural affinity for the Force, needed protection from Palpatine and their father. Deciding it would be best if they were separated, the two Jedi Masters agreed to send the infant boy to live with his father's stepbrother, Owen Lars, and his wife, Beru, on Tatooine. Leia was sent to live under the protection of her newly adopted parents, Bail and Brea Organa of Alderaan. Kenobi took the infant to Tatooine personally, making the first leg of the journey in General Grievous's ship, the Solus One, to Nar Shaddaa, where he sold the starfighter to buy passage to the homeworld of the Lars family. Intending to watch over Skywalker as he grew, Kenobi chose to go into hiding on Tatooine and live close to the boy. During the first days of his exile, Kenobi visited the Lars homestead every day, always trying to stay clear of Owen and Beru so that they would not see him, in order to watch Luke from afar. Later, Kenobi's intervention in the family business of Lars would mark him an unwelcome man in Owen's eyes, and, as a result, Kenobi would eventually stop watching the boy every single day. According to Skywalker, his first use of the Force was when he was roughly 6, and through the Force, located a lost screwdriver that was under the couch. He was severely scolded by his uncle, with the argument that he could only have known its location because he placed it there, and learned afterward not to duplicate the stunt. When Skywalker was 10 years old, he ran away when Owen refused to tell him information concerning his father. Unfortunately, the boy became lost in a sandstorm. In the desert, he had a vision of a tall, dark figure, and shortly afterward, he met a young boy named Annie. The two boys realized they had much in common. Neither knew much about their father. They were both great pilots. They both wanted to leave Tatooine someday, and that they could sense things before they happened. They soon discovered a sand person buried in the sand, and took his gaffy stick. They then sought shelter in a nearby cave, but a pack of womp rats drove them back out into the storm, where they stumbled upon a red and white astromech droid. Annie rigged up the astromech's motivator to explode, causing a flare. Unfortunately, the flare attracted the attention of a crate dragon that attacked the two boys. Skywalker lost sight of Annie, but on instinct, he killed the dragon by throwing his Gavi stick down its throat. Exhausted, Skywalker fell unconscious, but fortunately, Owen and a rescue party found him. Once they did, there was no sign of the Krayt Dragon or Annie. Skywalker, however, was certain it was more than just a dream, and Owen knew that there was something special about his nephew. In what was possibly the first encounter Skywalker remembered having with Kenobi, Skywalker and Wendy Marstrap were cruising down Beggar's Canyon in Skywalker's T-16 Skyhopper in search of Womp Rats to Bullseye. Crashing, the two managed to evade Sand People and discourage Jawas from stealing the Skyhopper. Making camp in a cave, they were cornered by a Krayt Dragon, but Kenobi arrived and chased it off. Then, taming a dewback, the hermit returned Skywalker and Marstrap to the Lars homestead. Sometime during his teenage years, Skywalker was challenged to a speed race by a local braggart, Gorm Maldorf, in The Cage. On the morning of the race, Gorm's decapitated body was found in the cage. Skywalker began his own investigation of the death, and with the help of Kenobi, he deduced that Gorm was accidentally killed by his companion Chester the night before, while attempting to rig the cage for the race. Skywalker spent the first 19 years of his life on the Lars Moisture Farm, where his uncle tried unsuccessfully to discourage all of his adventurous tendencies. This created friction between the two, as Skywalker's daring nature conflicted with Owen's staid sensibilities. As a teenager, Skywalker dreamed of adventures beyond Tatooine, and clashed with his uncle over his desires to fly among the stars to distant worlds. When prompted with inquiries about his father's involvement in the Clone Wars, Lars told him that his father had been a navigator on a spice freighter. Despite the mild deception, Skywalker became an adventure-seeking youth, piloting his Incom T-16 Skyhopper through Beggar's Canyon and racing his landspeeder with little regard for his own safety. In addition to sharing his father's natural piloting skills, Skywalker developed a knack for mechanical repairs while looking after droids and fixing the moisture evaporators. At some point, he owned a dog. Oh god, what is that, Wikipedia? Skywalker cultivated a group of like-minded friends on Tatooine, amongst whom he earned the nickname Wormy. The group included Deke, Wendy, Cammy Lonesner, and Fixer, whose horizons did not extend much past Tatooine itself, and Tank, and Biggs Darklighter, who shared Skywalker's dreams of joining the Imperial Academy and becoming pilots. Darklighter was perhaps Skywalker's closest friend, whom he looked up to as a brother. Biggs left for the Academy in one BBY, much to Skywalker's pride, jealousy, and dismay. As more of Skywalker's friends left the planet to follow their dreams, he became increasingly frustrated that his uncle would not allow him to leave, claiming that he still needed help with the farm. In truth, Owen was trying to prevent Skywalker from following in his father's footsteps. The Galactic Civil War, the purchase of 2 droids by Skywalker's uncle, changed the youth's life forever. With the discovery of a desperate message to Obi-Wan Kenobi contained within the astromech droid R2-D2, Skywalker soon found himself in the company of Kenobi after being attacked by Sand People. Kenobi then revealed to Skywalker that he had once been a Jedi Knight who served in the Clone Wars with Skywalker's father. He went on to inform Skywalker that his father was no cargo pilot, but a Jedi Knight struck down by Darth Vader. Soon after, Skywalker and Kenobi came upon a group of slaughtered Jawas. Luke deduced from learning that Imperial stormtroopers were responsible that they might have looked into the sales records of the droids and rushed home in hopes of saving his aunt and uncle. Upon quickly returning home, Skywalker discovered that he was too late. His aunt and uncle had been murdered by Imperial stormtroopers looking for R2-D2 and C-3PO. With his family dead, he agreed to accompany Kenobi to Alderaan to deliver the astromech, who was carrying the plans for the Death Star, to Bail Organa at the behest of Organa's daughter, Princess Leia Organa. The two traveled to the Chalmun's Cantina to obtain passage off the planet and met Han Solo and his first mate Chewbacca. Skywalker nearly had a fatal run-in with Ponda Baba in the Cantina. Obi-Wan brokered a deal to pay Solo 2,000 credits up front, plus 15 more when they arrived on Alderaan. Luke sold his speeder to pay for the 2,000 up front. After escaping stormtroopers and blasting off the planet in Solo's ship, the Millennium Falcon, Kenobi began Skywalker's instruction in the ways of the Force, much to the mocking of Solo. This teaching, however, was soon interrupted by their arrival in the Alderaan system and their discovery of the planet's destruction. They then spotted a patrolling TIE fighter and, upon following it, found that it was approaching what appeared to be a small moon. To their horror, however, It turned out to be the Death Star. Caught by the Death Star's tractor beam, they were brought aboard the massive space station. Once on board, Kenobi separated from Skywalker, Solo, Chewbacca, and the droids to deactivate the tractor beam. However, when R2-D2 discovered that Leia Organa was being held captive, Skywalker insisted on rescuing her. With Solo and Chewbacca's help, the trio made it into the detention area in the guise of Imperial stormtroopers escorting a Wookiee prisoner. They were able to rescue Organa, but had to jump into the garbage chute in order to escape the pursuing Imperial forces. Later, Skywalker and Organa were separated from Solo and Chewbacca, but after swinging across a deep shaft, they were able to meet back up with their companions in the hangar bay. Eventually, the group escaped the Death Star, but only after Kenobi sacrificed himself in a duel with Darth Vader. They traveled to the hidden rebel base on Yavin 4, even though the Death Star was tracking them. It was then that Solo received his reward for rescuing Organa and prepared to leave the group. Skywalker attempted to persuade him to stay and help against the Empire, but Solo refused, deeply disappointing him. It was at the Yavin base that Skywalker first became an official member of the Rebel Alliance. He spent much time in the base's flight simulators, showcasing his piloting skills for the rebellion's leaders. In several simulations, he was opposed by an entire Starfleet and was killed only twice. Red Leader Garvin Dryce, after inspecting Skywalker's simulation results with Vanden Willard, approached him and told him how impressed he was with his abilities. Dryce welcomed him as a member of the Red Squadron, gave him his own T-65 X-Wing starfighter, and assigned him as Red 5. It was Kayan Farlander who showed Luke the basics of flying an X-Wing. Just prior to boarding his X-Wing, Skywalker encountered his old friend, Biggs Darklighter. The two would be flying as wingmen, just like old times, in the upcoming battle. In a brief conversation, Darklighter reassured Dryce of Skywalker's piloting skills, and promised Luke that the two would catch up on each other's stories when they got back. Skywalker took part in the Battle of Yavin, witnessing the death of many compatriots, including Darklighter. After the death of the two squadron leaders, he took it upon himself to lead the final assault. With the timely arrival of the Millennium Falcon and the guidance of Kenobi's spirit, Skywalker took a single shot and used the Force to direct the proton torpedoes to their target, destroying the station. For this action, he, Chewbacca, and Han Solo were awarded the Medal of Bravery. After the destruction of the Death Star, Skywalker spearheaded a number of missions for the Rebel Alliance. Within 2 weeks of the Battle of Yavin, Skywalker had participated in destroying the Imperial I-class Star Destroyer, Liquidator, helped the Alliance collect new X-Wings directly from Vor Horion, where he displayed his extraordinary potential in bringing down a TIE fighter using only his father's lightsaber, fought in the Battle of Vaktuin, and traveled to Bonadan and the Unknown Regions. He was also sent to investigate new base locations on the Keeper's World, Akuria 2, and Drexel. All three ventures ended in violence and failure. At some point, Skywalker reluctantly agreed to return to Tatooine in order to investigate a crashed Imperial transport capsule that Jawas managed to steal. Although the mission became a lot more complicated upon being infected with Bledsoe's disease due to a squill bite, although he nonetheless succeeded in uncovering the connection between Bledsoe's disease, the transport capsules, and rebel outposts being destroyed. The discovery of Luke's identity had become a priority for the Emperor, and after Luke won a spectacular pod racing event on Moonalinst, which secured funding for the rebellion, Imperial spy X7, who had integrated himself into the rebel ranks, suspected that Luke was the one that the Emperor sought. A short time later, when Luke helped Han and Ferrus Olin, a Jedi Master who had been secretly watching over Leia on Alderaan, rescue Leia from Imperial custody over Delaya, X7 confirmed Luke's identity by dousing Leia with truth serum. Luke survived an assassination attempt by X7 on Yavin 4. Luke would lay down on his homeworld Tatooine after his recovery, reconnecting with his friends and racing skyhoppers with Jackson. Luke and Jackson avoided capture by Bosk, a Trandoshan bounty hunter tasked by Jabba the Hutt to capture Luke, a known associate of Han Solo. X7 eventually tracked Luke to Tatooine, but the Imperial spy was repelled by the timely arrival of Solo in the Millennium Falcon. As X7 gathered forces for a final strike on Skywalker, Luke flew with Red Squadron on a mission to Kamino to inspect Imperial weapons development. Lune Divinian, a mercenary pilot recruited by X7, attempted to assassinate Luke on Kamino, where Red Squadron had found evidence of genetic experiments by the Empire. Div abandoned the mission and was taken into custody by the rebellion. Luke would ultimately be captured by Rezi Soresh. X7's master and the brains behind Project Omega, an Imperial program bent on creating the perfect assassin by erasing his memory. Han Solo would once again come to the rescue, shooting Sorish dead. Luke, Leia, and Wedge Antilles began searching for a suitable world to establish a new alliance base 2 months after the Battle of Yavin, using only T-65 X-Wings to avoid attracting Imperials. One of these journeys led them to the Dominus system in the Outer Rim. There, the three were attacked by a Star Destroyer and a squad of TIE fighters. During the confrontation, Organa's fighter was hit and she was forced to make an emergency landing on Dominus 3. Leia killed an Imperial pilot chasing after her, while Luke and Wedge repaired her ship. Later, the three escaped the Imperials by sneaking through a polar storm and returned to the Alliance fleet. After a practice run in the simulator, Skywalker and Antilles were called by Organa to a secret meeting. There, Organa talked about the possibility of an Imperial spy within the Alliance and founded Greyflight, a new starfighter squadron that would exist outside the Alliance's official hierarchy. This new team included Skywalker, Organa, Antilles, Prithy, Roose Kalkin, Fallback Cord, Tess Alder, Ardana Sin, and Graham Cortez. Greyflight's mission both to uncover the spy and find a home to make a permanent base for the Alliance. As they were performing an exercise routine, Skywalker and Prithy broke protocol. Upset that Luke disobeyed a direct order, Leia grounded him for the next 6 rotations and deactivated his X-Wing's command codes. While Organa took Greyflight on a scouting mission, Skywalker went to have lunch with Prithy, who had also been grounded by Organa. However, Skywalker received a warning from Obi-Wan Kenobi's spirit, who said that Leia was in danger. Deciding to disobey Organa's orders again, Skywalker and Prithy took their ships and went to save her. As they jumped to Organa's location, Skywalker and Prithy talked about how she was a Force sensitive, just like he was. 6 months after the Battle of Yavin, Skywalker, Solo, and Chewbacca were dispatched to investigate Blood Scar pirate activity near a rebel supply line, although Solo was reluctant and unsure of his ultimate role in the Alliance. During the mission, Skywalker and the others became mixed up with a group of AWOL stormtroopers and traveled with them on their ship after the rogue stormtroopers began following them and helped them beat off a pirate attack. The stormtroopers originally posed as consolidated shipping investigators while the rebels posed as independent shippers, but they quickly learned each other's identity. Neither side fully trusted the other, but Skywalker was able to keep hostilities from breaking out between them. However, they then learned that Leia Organa was being hunted by Shel Kanwa and sought to help her, while the Hand of Judgment believed that the pirates had a connection to the governor's office on Shel Kanwa. The 3 rebels, with aid from the renegade Imperials, were able to sneak into Makran City and rescue Organa, and escape back to the Rebel Alliance despite a large Imperial presence, including that of Darth Vader. During these events, Ben Kenobi spoke to Luke through the Force and continued to teach him more about the Force. At an unknown point, Skywalker encountered the Teras Cassie disciple and Force-sensitive Tusken Raider, I don't know dude, it's Tusken, who had been tailing Skywalker to avenge his tribe due to it being wiped out by the demon Outlander, actually his father Anakin Skywalker. The Raider, in a vicious duel, defeated Skywalker and held him at his mercy. However, having encountered Vader earlier, who also resembled the demon Outlander, he spared Skywalker due to a vision he experienced, disobeying his mentor, the Emperor's Hand Arden Lin, in the process, and left for the parts unknown. Eager to serve the Rebel Alliance, Skywalker's early years were filled with adventures including fighting pirates, aiding in battle against Imperial forces, and evading the clutches of Darth Vader and his agents. While on a scouting mission, Skywalker's vessel was caught in an ambush by Imperials that were blockading the Yavin sector, thus forcing him to hide in a hyperwash of a trans-dimensional comet, depositing him onto the barren ice world of Hoth. Skywalker returned to the Alliance, informed his superiors of the isolated world, and the Rebel Alliance planned to evacuate the outposts on Yavin 4 and Thilla to set up a base on Hoth. In addition, Luke, with Red Squadron, aided the rebels in evacuating during the most intense portion of the blockade, and temporarily managed to save Dodonna, although he was unable to get him off the planet. When Yavin 4 was evacuated, Jan Dodonna promoted Skywalker to commander, but the promotion was not filed before the general's capture. Even so, mere days after the base was evacuated, Skywalker became a lieutenant commander and led missions to Dantooine, Raltier, and Tatooine. It was during this time that Skywalker also began to truly feel at home in a starfighter squadron, when not flying alongside Red Squadron and his mentor Commander Nara. He led the neophyte fighter group Rogue Squadron to planets like Barkesh, Korax, Corellia, and Gerard V. Before the year was out, Skywalker was also finding himself participating in missions outside of a starfighter cockpit. He saw action at Jabeam, Polden Minor, Callist 6, Kiva, and Per Lupello, and learned firsthand of the horrors of war. He even met a clone trooper, Abel, who was unaware of the events in the galaxy. With a little bit of history and showing of his lightsaber, Luke was able to convince Abel that the Jedi took up arms against the Empire, who swore loyalty to the Alliance. On Callist 6, Luke had an unexpected reunion with his childhood friend, Janek Sunbear, now a lieutenant in the Imperial Army, which ended with a near destruction of the Alliance fleet. Luke later joined a team sent to a desert moon near Aridus. When they were attacked by the long-extinct creatures known as rat ghouls, he heard a calling in the Force and was carried off by the rat ghouls. He was soon confronted by a centuries-old Jedi, Celeste Morn, who was driven insane by the spirit of the much older Sith Karnes Moore, who was residing inside the Moore talisman she wore. Morn quickly defeated Skywalker and held him at saber point. Mur saw a great potential in Luke and detached the talisman from Morn and leapt towards Luke. Leia pushed Luke out of the way, and the talisman began to attach itself to Leia, who Mur also saw potential in. Luke tried to pull the talisman off to no avail. However, Celeste Morn regained her sanity and used her lightsaber to remove the talisman. She then wore it again, intending to trap Mur within her body. As Morn prepared to leave the planet, she was confronted by Luke, who asked to know more about the Jedi's history and his destiny. Morn responded by telling him that there was darkness in his blood, in his past, and in his future. Morn then left. However, now there was nothing controlling the rat ghouls, and they turned their sights on Luke and Leia. Luke told Leia to stay behind him, and just before the rat ghouls could attack, Han Solo and Chewbacca came to rescue them. In one ABY, Luke Skywalker was contacted by Malatobuk, the wife of his friend Chewbacca, while he was working with R2-D2 on an engine in a workshop. Chewbacca was supposed to go home with Han Solo for Life Day, an important Wookiee festival, but there was no sign of the Millennium Falcon around Kashyyyk. Malatobuk was worried, and she wanted to know whether Skywalker had seen her husband recently. The rebel pilot had no clue why the Falcon was late, but he tried to reassure Malatobuk, advising her to smile and to trust Solo and Chewbacca's ability to overcome any danger. A bit later, Darth Vader ordered the blockade of Kashyyyk in hopes of catching Captain Solo and his Wookiee first mate. However, the Imperial agents were fooled into thinking the rebels had already left the planet, and the blockade ceased. Luke Skywalker then went to Kashyyyk along with Princess Leia and attended the traditional Life Day ceremony, and this was the plot of the dreaded holiday special. In 2 ABY, he accompanied Leia Organa on a diplomatic mission to the Serkarpus system, where they crash-landed on the planet of Mimban. On Mimban, Skywalker and Organa encountered a Force-sensitive old woman named Hala. They struck a deal with her, promising to find the Kyber crystal if she promised to aid them in their escape off the planet. However, Darth Vader was also looking for the powerful Kyber crystal, both in pursuit of the powerful Force relic. Skywalker and Vader dueled in the ancient temple of Pomojima. Every movement of Skywalker was guided by the spirit of Kenobi and empowered by the crystal, so the young man amazingly managed to hold Vader off, even managing to sever the Dark Lord's mechanical arm. Shocked, Vader tumbled down a deep pit, ending their duel. Transferred to Echo Base alongside Rogue Squadron in 3 ABY, Skywalker participated in regular patrols of the frozen perimeter. While reconnoitering the surroundings of Echo Base, Skywalker was attacked by a Wampa. He regained consciousness in the creature's cave, severed its arm with his lightsaber, and escaped only to find that he was far from Echo Base. After a long walk in the icy wind, he collapsed from exhaustion. Near death, he had a vision of Kenobi, who told him to seek the teachings of Yoda in the Dagobah system, and was then rescued by Han Solo. Skywalker recovered from his wounds, including a deeply gashed face and a crushed cheekbone in a bacta tank, but did not have much time to recover. One of Vader's thousands of probe droids, launched across the galaxy in search of the Jedi in the new Alliance base, had reached Hoth and sent proof of rebel activity to the Galactic Empire. In the ensuing battle, Skywalker led Rogue Squadron in an effort to counter the attack and buy time for the evacuation of Echo Base. Under his leadership, the speeders proved more effective in attacking the massive Imperial walkers than the Empire realized was possible. Furthermore, even after he was shot down, Skywalker demonstrated his formidable potential as a Jedi when he proceeded to single-handedly destroy 2 walkers, including the Blizzard 4, with spectacular effectiveness. As Imperial forces breached the defenses, the last rebel transport departed, and Skywalker fled the planet aboard his X-Wing. Skywalker then traveled to Dagobah, where he encountered Yoda. In their initial meeting, Skywalker was frustrated and confused about his surroundings, and was thus rather short-tempered with the diminutive Yoda, who did not initially identify himself. Skywalker gained a new appreciation for the small creature upon learning his identity, though Yoda agreed to train Skywalker only at the insistence of Kenobi's spirit. Skywalker's training proved to be difficult, as his adventurous past had shaped his mind toward action and emotional instinct. When Yoda asked him to enter a cave in which he was supposed to find only what he took with him, he was challenged by a vision of himself, wearing Darth Vader's armor. Shortly after, he had a vision of Han Solo and Leia Organa suffering at Cloud City on Bespin. Despite Yoda and Kenobi's warnings and disapproval, Skywalker rashly departed from Dagobah to rescue them. Skywalker arrived at Cloud City and, with blaster in hand, moved in to rescue his friends. He was shot at by Boba Fett and ambushed by a group of stormtroopers and Imperial officers. He briefly spotted Organa being used as a human shield by an Imperial officer. As she was dragged away, Leia attempted to warn him that he was walking into a trap. While attempting to pursue them, Skywalker's path was diverted to the carbon freeze chamber, where Darth Vader awaited him. Skywalker engaged the Dark Lord in a fierce duel. Vader proved his superiority in his customized Form 5 swordplay, executing Cho Mai and Dun Mok. After severing Skywalker's hand from his body, Vader attempted to seduce the weakened Jedi to the dark side of the Force, offering Skywalker the chance to destroy the Emperor and bring order to the galaxy. In his effort to sway Skywalker from his defiant refusals, Vader then revealed his identity as Skywalker's father. Faced with the shocking and horrifying claim and the even more fearsome temptation to join Vader, Skywalker found the moral courage to choose death instead by throwing himself down a long shaft. He was sucked through an opening portal at the bottom of the chamber, then through another one which led out of the floating city. Skywalker grabbed onto a weather vane, preventing a fall to his death. Weak and helpless, Skywalker at first called out for Kenobi, but failed to contact him. He then reached out to Organa with the Force, and soon the Millennium Falcon, with Lando Calrissian, Organa, Chewbacca, and the droids on board, arrived to rescue him. After reuniting with the Rebel fleet, Skywalker received his cybernetic hand aboard the Redemption. A short time after the Battle of Hoth, Skywalker was assigned as part of a diplomatic delegation to Aberdan, doubtless playing off his heroic stature as the rebellion's Jedi hero. Skywalker was one of 5 dignitaries sent to convince the Aberdan Government Council to join the rebel fold after its revolution against the Empire. However, Aberdan's freedom didn't last. Grand General Malcor Brashin and General Bren Tantor arrived within days and crushed the rebellion. Haman Flat, a leader of the Aberdan nationalists, sold out the rebel diplomats in an attempt to save his life. Skywalker, along with the rest of the delegation, was hunted down by Tantor and captured. From Aberdan, Skywalker was sent to Kalan prison, from which he awaited transfer to Coruscant. Fortunately, he was rescued by none other than his captor, Tantor. Shortly after Skywalker's capture, Tantor had refused an order to massacre civilians. For that, he was imprisoned on Kalan. Unlike Skywalker, Tantor had a unit of loyal stormtroopers to call upon. His stormtroopers freed Tantor, who escaped to the rebels' General Tyr Taskin, taking Skywalker with him to prove his good intentions. The aftermath of the Battle of Hoth scattered the Alliance, and Skywalker was stationed at temporary bases on Golrath and Arbra, from where he continued to perform missions for the Rebel Alliance. On one such mission, while boarding an Imperial ship, Skywalker found the entire crew dead, suspecting an unusual crimson stone to be the cause of the mysterious deaths. Luke returned to Golrath, but was already infected with the disease. Soon, he was lying comatose with his eyes scarlet red. The disease Skywalker had contracted was indeed related to the Crimson Stone, known as the Crimson Forever. It was caused when the two stones from the Red Nebula were separated, calling Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca back from the search for Solo. Organa and Calrissian journeyed to find the other stone in the Falcon to save Skywalker. Actually, Skywalker's infection by the Crimson Forever was part of a revenge attempt by Domina Tog, because Darth Vader had told her that Skywalker was responsible for the death of her brother, Orman. Tog had set the trap for Skywalker when, after she retrieved the stones, her ship was boarded by Imperial stormtroopers. After her bounty hunters had fought the stormtroopers off, she triggered a canister with one of the stones inside of the Imperial ship, killing all of them and preparing the way for Skywalker's infection. Although Calrissian and Organa were captured by Tog's minions, they escaped, and another prisoner unleashed the second stone on Tog's ship. Calrissian and Organa then struck a deal with Tog, who was trapped in a sealed-off compartment, to trade the second stone for a ship to escape with. Tog agreed, and Organa and Calrissian brought the second stone back to Golrath, where the crystals were reunited, and Skywalker was cured. After his recovery, they loaded the crystals on the abandoned Imperial ship and sent it into Golrath's sun, and Skywalker returned to serving the Alliance. When the Alliance discovered the Imperial superweapon Tarkin, a small commando team consisting of Skywalker, Organa, Chewbacca, R2-D2, and C-3PO, was dispatched to pose as workers and infiltrate the battle station, flying the Falcon to Hokaleg, the location of the Tarkin. The Rebel commandos planned to use proton grenades to destroy the superweapons reactor. Unfortunately, Vader was present at the station and, sensing Skywalker's presence, laid a trap to protect the reactor and catch the aspiring Jedi. Only an assassination attempt on Vader's life by several Imperial officers allowed the Rebel team to escape. Fleeing the Sith, Skywalker and the others aborted the mission and left in a ship. They were hotly pursued by Imperial TIE fighters, but Calrissian, who had stowed away on the Falcon, flew the freighter up from Hokaleg and blasted the fighters. The Rebel team then boarded the Falcon and prepared to make their escape, but Vader, having survived the assassination attempt, now gave chase in his personal fighter. To escape him, Skywalker dumped the Falcon's water supply into space, which froze. Vader crashed into a wall of ice, ending that threat, but the Imperials then fired the Tarkin's main weapon at them. However, Organa had sabotaged it, so instead of destroying the rebels, the weapon destroyed itself. In preparation for another Alliance mission, Skywalker, Calrissian, and Chewbacca were sent to retrieve 4 TIE fighters. Meeting their contact, Orion Ferret, on Bazaar, Luke and Lando received a ship and the coordinates of the garbage world of Patch 4, where the fighters had been located. Upon arrival, they found the TIE fighters, but were attacked by the Watch Beast, which, unbeknownst to Skywalker, was controlled by Ferret. Skywalker and Calrissian fled into some nearby caves, only to find an entire community of people living inside. Acting off of a tip received from Serja Kesselrook, one of the inhabitants, Skywalker dashed for the ship they arrived in while Calrissian distracted the Watch Beast. Reaching the shuttle, Skywalker activated the sonic pacifier that controlled the beast, putting it to sleep. They then retrieved the fighters, the Falcon, and Chewbacca, and returned to Arbra. Ascending to the command of Rogue Squadron, Skywalker fell in love with one of his squadron mates, the talented and enigmatic Shira Bree. During a heated battle with Imperial forces, Skywalker's targeting computer was knocked out of commission, and he instead relied on the Force to pick his targets. Inexplicably, the Force told him to fire on a friendly vessel, and he shot Bree out of the sky. For this act, Skywalker was stripped of command and put on trial. As a result, Skywalker's confidence in the Force was shaken. He investigated the matter and discovered that Bree was actually an Imperial agent. Skywalker cleared his name and was reinstated as a Rebel commander. Over time, Skywalker grew more powerful in the Force, and his exploits in the Alliance gained a higher profile. Skywalker received word that Boba Fett, who had in his possession the frozen Han Solo, was lurking near Gaul. Skywalker and the rogues set off to provide cover for Organa and Calrissian in the Millennium Falcon. However, the attack was unsuccessful as their guide, Dash Rendar, abandoned them and Boba Fett escaped. On the return trip, Wes Jansen's astromech malfunctioned, took over his fighter, and targeted Skywalker's craft. He was able to disable it though, thankfully without harm to Jansen. Upon returning to their base, it was discovered that the droid had been sabotaged by a mechanic. Returning to Tatooine, Luke spent much time at the old residence of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he constructed a new lightsaber with the help of a journal prepared by Kenobi, based on the design of his lightsaber. After fending off an attack by a swoop gang with the aid of Dash Rendar, who had been hired to watch out for him, Skywalker encountered a message droid that was originally sent to Organa, who had gone to meet with Black Sun representatives. However, Skywalker was able to determine the password to reveal the message. The message was sent by Koth Melan, a Bothan spy master. Skywalker traveled to meet with Melan, along with Rendar. Melan sought Luke's help in attacking the freighter, Suprosa, which was carrying top-secret Imperial data. Skywalker trained the squadron of Bothan Y-Wing pilots and led the attack. Although they suffered heavy losses, the information was retrieved, and Rendar again left after failing to prevent the deaths of several Bothan pilots. However, upon returning to the Bothan base, they fell under attack. Though the data was safely moved from translation, Skywalker was temporarily captured by Barabel bounty hunters. He managed to escape during the attack and was contacted by Chewbacca, who reported that Organa was in the hands of the Black Sun leader, Prince Xizor, who had been behind the repeated assassination attempts on Skywalker to aggravate Darth Vader as part of a power struggle with the Dark Lord. Skywalker met up with Calrissian and Chewbacca and smuggled them into Imperial Center. After joining forces once more with Rendar, Skywalker was able to infiltrate Xizor's palace. By entering through a sub-basement sewers, they were able to rescue Organa, but were intercepted by numerous guards. Xizor fired on Skywalker, but the aspiring Jedi easily blocked his shots. At that point, Calrissian activated the timer on a thermal detonator and dropped it into the maintenance shaft, dooming the building. Xizor and the guards fled, allowing the rescue party to meet up with the Millennium Falcon, which was piloted by C-3PO and R2-D2. Before they left, Skywalker was challenged by Guri, Xizor's powerful human replica droid. Skywalker accepted the challenge, beating her empty-handed, but refused to finish her. Along with Organa, Calrissian, and Chewbacca, he escaped in the Millennium Falcon. They were pursued by Xizor's private fleet, but the intervention of Rogue Squadron and the Imperial Navy allowed the Falcon to escape, escorted by the rogues. Shortly thereafter, Skywalker and his friends were sent to Las Bane to investigate the disappearance of rebel agents Tay Vanis and Yam Argo. The search took them from Las Bane to Iskalon, Gamandor, Cabre, a stopover at Belderone until finally it concluded with the discovery of a broken and comatose Vanis on Archon 4. While there, Calrissian and Chewbacca learned that Boba Fett had finally delivered Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. Skywalker finally arrived on Tatooine 9 months after the Battle of Hoth, early on in 4 ABY, when Organa and half the rescue party were held captive by Hutt crime lord Jabba. Skywalker went to free them and Solo. Skillful use of the Force allowed Skywalker to get past Jabba's Gamorrean guards and his majordomo, Bib Fortuna, but the Hutt was not so easily swayed and attempted to feed Skywalker to his Rancor. Skywalker killed the fearsome monster, but Jabba was furious and sentenced all the captured Alliance heroes, including an unfrozen Solo, to death at the pit of Carkoon. However, right before he was put into the pit, Skywalker escaped when R2-D2 shot his lightsaber to him and freed the other prisoners on the skiff. The aspiring Jedi massacred Jabba's guards, though he sustained a minor wound on his cybernetic hand when he was shot by Tame Dren Garen. Skywalker, Solo, Organa, Chewbacca, Calrissian, and the droids escaped through a menacing sandstorm after destroying both Jabba's barge and the gangster himself. Mara Jade, at Jabba's palace undercover as a dancer, was unable to complete her mission of assassinating Skywalker because Jabba would not allow her to come with him on the barge. Skywalker later had a vision of how she would have prevented his escape when he revisited Dagobah. Not long after, Skywalker returned to Dagobah to complete his training and received confirmation from Yoda and the spirit of Kenobi that Vader was indeed his father Anakin Skywalker, a former Jedi Knight who turned to the dark side of the Force. The elderly and dying Yoda told Luke that his training was complete, but in order to be a Jedi, he would have to confront Darth Vader once again, a notion that Skywalker found painful to accept. Furthermore, Skywalker realized that Organa was his sister and would be in peril if their father discovered her identity. Skywalker nevertheless accompanied his friends on the mission to the Force moon of Endor to knock out the shield generator that protected the second Death Star in orbit. Upon reaching Endor, Skywalker sensed Vader's presence on the nearby Star Destroyer Executor and realized his presence endangered the mission. His companions dismissed the concerns and proceeded on. However, thanks to Skywalker merely accompanying the mission, Vader was able to detect the presence of the rebels in the shuttle, in which they infiltrated the forest moon, but allowed them to land so he could deal with them himself. When the rebel force was discovered by Imperial scout troopers, Skywalker and Organa pursued them on speeder bikes through the dense foliage and successfully prevented them from reporting the rebels' presence. Skywalker showed off his skill in the Jedi ways by leaping from one speeder to another while traveling at high speed and deflecting the laser fire of another, which he destroyed with a stroke of his new lightsaber. However, during the high-speed chase, Organa became separated from Skywalker. Upon learning of her disappearance, Solo, Skywalker, Chewbacca, and the droids went looking for her, but were captured by a tribe of Ewoks. Skywalker prevented a skirmish with the small forest dwellers, and ingeniously rescued the party after the Ewoks, who thought C-3PO was a god, planned to sacrifice the rebel heroes. He used the Force to levitate the protocol droid, convincing the Ewoks to release and aid the rebels. However, Skywalker knew that he had to confront Vader. In the Ewok village, Skywalker revealed to Organa her true familial heritage and resolved to face Vader. Not long after, Skywalker surrendered to Vader in an attempt to bring the Dark Lord back to the light side, but he ultimately became a prisoner of the Emperor. Once on board the Death Star, the Emperor and Vader attempted to corrupt Skywalker with promises to save his friends from their trap if he joined the dark side. As a backup idea, the Emperor goaded Skywalker to strike him down to save the rebel fleet, which was being decimated in the Battle of Endor. Skywalker, in a moment of weakness, lashed out, but Vader stopped his strike. Despite the clash, Skywalker managed to keep emotional control, much to the frustration of his enemies. Maintaining control of his emotions, he hid himself and refused to continue to fight. However, the control was lost when Vader telepathically sensed the existence of Skywalker's sister and threatened to corrupt her instead. Furious at the threat, Skywalker viciously attacked, wielding the full power of Damso, and eventually cut off the Sith Lord's right hand, nearly killing Vader. Palpatine then demanded him to finish off Vader and take his place by his side. Luke, however, threw his lightsaber away, realizing that he was becoming what he sought to destroy. He declared himself a Jedi, just as Anakin Skywalker had been before him. Enraged, the Emperor unleashed Force lightning against Skywalker to torture and eventually kill the young Jedi. Vader found himself in a similar position as he had been 23 years earlier, when he made the decision to save Palpatine from Mace Windu, allowing the Sith Lord to torture and kill his would-be executor with Force lightning. Palpatine declared his intention to kill Luke, and Vader made the decision to act. He picked up his master from the ground and cast him down the same shaft Palpatine had intended for Vader to use to dispose of Luke's body, but in doing so, he turned Palpatine's lethal Force lightning against him, irreparably damaging his life support suit of armor. In an act of self-sacrifice and love for his son, Anakin Skywalker re-emerged to destroy the Emperor. On the deteriorating Death Star at the foot of Vader's shuttle, Skywalker removed the former Vader's mask and looked upon his father's face for the first and only time before Anakin would become one with the Force. Skywalker took his father's body on board the shuttle and escaped just before the Death Star's destruction. Back on Endor, Skywalker cremated his father's armor in the manner of the Jedi's funeral, as his father's body had already vanished. He then joined in the celebration of the apparent defeat of the Empire, during which he saw the spirits of Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker appear. Thus, Skywalker came full circle both as Jedi and as a person. The day after his duel with Darth Vader at the Battle of Endor, while still recovering from the wounds inflicted by Palpatine's Force lightning, Skywalker saved Wedge Antilles from certain injury or death. Antilles had discovered a message droid that was threatening to self-destruct, requesting help for the beleaguered outpost world, Bakura. Skywalker commanded an Alliance mission to the Bakura system, which was under siege by a strange alien race, the Sea-Rook, which used the life force of their captives to power their technology. There, Skywalker and Organa negotiated a temporary truce between the Rebel and Imperial forces to help fight off the invasion. Skywalker encountered a young Bakuran senator, Gariel Captison, and they eventually developed a mutual attraction for each other, but parted ways after the mission was complete. During the mission, Skywalker was infected with Olabrian trichoid parasites by the treacherous Imperial governor, Wilik Neris, and was also taken prisoner by the Sea-Rook. With the aid of Dev Sibwara, a Force-sensitive human serving the Sea-Rook, Skywalker was able to escape the Sea-Rook, disable their ship, and win the battle. Skywalker later dictated the terms of surrender to Wilik Neris for the Bakurans to have their freedom to choose their governing authority. The discovery of Dev Sibwara during the invasion of Bakura fueled Skywalker's conviction for finding others like him in the galaxy. Palpatine and Vader's purge was not absolute. Surely, he believed, there were Force users that had escaped the dark times. After returning from Bakura, Skywalker led the pilots of the understrength Rogue Squadron to Corellia on a vacation/scouting mission. They found the planet to be almost free of Imperial occupation. However, while sitting in a tap cafe in Coronet City, the city came under attack by General Weir and his forces. The Rogues held off the stormtroopers sent after them, and Luke's Jedi skills came in handy in defending the other pilots from blaster fire and keeping an AT-ST from falling over into Tycho Kelchu. N-10 Num could get away from it. After Num was captured, Luke pursued his Imperial captors, but they escaped off the planet in transports. Fortunately, Tycho and the Astromechs brought their X-Wings for them. Taking off in pursuit, they were delayed by a diversionary TIE fighter attack on a civilian convoy. Nevertheless, Skywalker and the other rogues tracked Weir and Ten to Tralis, where they found a hidden underground base. After a short firefight, Weir fled in a TIE, and Skywalker and Antilles commandeered TIEs of their own to pursue him. Meanwhile, Wes Jansen discovered that Num was already dead, tortured and killed by Weir. Skywalker and Antilles shot the general down, and they took him back to the Alliance as a prisoner. Shortly thereafter, Skywalker turned responsibility for the squadron over to Wedge. And as time moved on, the Galactic Civil War was over.